court is different. The term of the papal court, who he surrounds himself with. But the reality was that by personality, really very much, and this is not a criticism of him, but the reality was that by personality, by temperament, he liked to do things on his own. He basically ran his own communications. With great respect to the dicastery for communications, Pope Francis was his own man in so many
What's up,
ways.
chap? Let's get it on, chap.
And his appointments, how he wanted to bring peace to the world, assigning, for example, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi to be his delegate, his representative. This new pope will probably be different. I mean, he certainly will be different. He'll have his own personality, his own style of governance, and he will slowly begin to surround himself with men and women who share his vision for the church and how he wants the church to function. Again, with the same purpose, though, to bring souls to Christ and to also bring good government to the church.
We know that personnel is policy.
That's right.
In almost any way of life. And so he's going to look for those
What's up,
he
chat?
can count on to exercise his delegated authority throughout the Vatican. He's likewise, one of the most important things a pope does is select the bishops, the successors of the apostles across the globe. He's got input from the apostolic nuncios in the various countries, from the congregation of bishops, from the cardinals, who are always able to give lists of names of those who they think would be qualified. But that's one of the ways that he's able constantly to renew the church by the types of bishops that he chooses. And so he's going to be looking carefully at those more important positions so that they're able, in their own part of the vineyard, sharing his responsibility or exercising similar responsibility as bishops and other parts of the Lord's worldwide vineyard, so that they're able to get the whole church doing similar things according to the priorities that have been described over the course of the last week and a half.
Which are so significant. I mean, if you want to see the insight, and it's so unusual to have this insight into what it is that cardinals are thinking, the way that the church is thinking, setting a direction for the church over the last day and a half, well, a little bit beyond that.
What's up, chat? What's up? What's up?
We've been receiving these messages, if you're walking with the church, of where the church needs to go. What are the concerns on all of these cardinals' hearts? And we know that those concerns don't only belong to them. They obviously consulted with the many people that they work with in their home countries and brought
What up,
all
chat?
of those concerns in the hearts of their faithful that they represent to the table, which is why we saw some of the conversations around ethnic diversity. It's why we saw nothing about women's ordination. Why? Because that's a non-issue. And I think Pope Francis did the best job in articulating that with one word: no. One of his best interviews, I think, in terms of clarity, for sure. But I do think that those priorities that we saw laid out are something that we should take to heart.
What up, chat? Come on in.
And as we've gotten to know the cardinals over the last couple of days, I know that yesterday, particularly for those who are contenders to be coming out of that window in the next couple of minutes, when we think about that, pray for those people. Don't stop praying for them. I would urge every single member of the EWTN family to remember their names, to be involved in where they are.
That's exactly right. There's always an obsession, an understandable one, about papabili heading into an election. This is really, that's true. Certainly we look at those who are talked about, who might be contenders. But the other thing it does give us is an opportunity to get to know them.
Yes.
Most of us, over the course of time, have had some kind of a deal.
What's up, chat? What's up?
But for the vast majority of the world, of Catholics in the world, these are just names.
Right.
But they're names that they may have heard, but getting to know them, especially those Novendiales homilies, I think was a really fascinating experience, because you encounter those personalities, you see their understanding of the world, how they look back on Pope Francis, how they look forward to the new pontificate.
Been doing good, Joe.
To know these
What's up, Joe?
individual men, I think, is one of the great side aspects of the whole of the Sede Vacante.
It really is.
We are
A little bit about names, because
I think so
within
too.
about a
21
half hour
away.
or so, every
Still
mass
from
is celebrated
1900.
all over the world, and there are a minimum of about 500,000
Bet.
a day, because there are 407,000 priests celebrating at least one mass. There are funerals, there are weddings, there are other things. So every one of the
What's up, Joe? What's
500,000
up?
masses that's going to be able to be celebrated within a half hour is now going to be adding a new name to the Eucharistic prayer. And for us, that's so special there was great difficulty, especially celebrating Mass here, when you can't mention not only a Pope's name, but because the Pope is the Bishop of Rome, you can't mention anybody's name.
I'm
We're
watching the
going to
Pope.
be able to say very
I'm
soon
watching
when
the.
so-and-so, our Pope and Bishop here in Rome, and then across the globe we're going to be able to mention his name. And so
That's weird,
really
but thank
special
you.
in that supreme act of the Church's worship, the source and the summit of the real
Christian
Catholic life, we're going to be able to be verbally and spiritually united to this one who's not just going to choose for himself, but that name is
Honestly,
now going to influence the whole way
what
the
keeps me
church
motivated?
operates. And so highly significant for all of us, and it's going to be the second
My
surprise.
views
The first will be who
and
it
people
is,
interacting
and
in the live,
that itself is
even
great.
if
And
it
then it's
is
going to be
one
what's he
person.
trying to express by the name he's chosen. And
Cause I'm
tonight,
sure
I'm
I will go
sure we're
back. I will
going to
come
have a
back to
chance to
that.
parse
I'm sure
that.
I would
Yes, unpack it very well, and it does come back
meet
to
that
that.
one person
We don't
again
get any
along the
breathing
line.
room between
Cause I remember
who it
one
is
person
and what he would like
used
to
to
be
watch
called, and
my
there's great significance in that because he is
lives
leaving
all the time.
behind
I made him
that old
moderator,
person and
and he came
receiving a
back.
new name in prayer with our Lord.
So
Just
That's
like
going to be
Jesus said, you
that's what
were
keeps me
called
motivated.
Simon,
Is
son of John.
even if it
From
is
now
just
on,
one
you will
person,
be called Rock or Kepha in
it's still
Aramaic,
cool.
Peter.
So
And so a similar reality is lived out by every pope since the 530s when they've started to choose new names upon the assumption of
I
these
figured
awesome
out now. That's what I
responsibilities.
said.
Since we don't have any cardinals that I'm aware of named after pagan gods, the author could one of two things: either he will take that regnal
Who do
name
y'all
as we
think the new
call it,
pope will be?
giving us a real insight, or, which is his privilege,
I think that's a
also
good
take his
question.
own Christian name. That also would be a very interesting possibility because there are some cardinals in here with classic names. Just throwing out, for example, I'm not saying that this is the person. Matteo Zuppi could choose Pope Matthew.
Of course, of course. And I don't think that's a throwaway name.
No,
You know,
exactly.
he was on the list that we reviewed yesterday, and I do think it is a worthwhile reminder for people to know that some of the people that we discussed last night may be the person coming out of that window, coming through those drapes. If you were to think about from a voting perspective who would be the most well known, obviously we've talked about Cardinal Parolin over and over and over again. He has a beautiful personal story. He has a long history here, obviously has access to many of the cardinals who came in because of his diplomatic service and because of the great service that he gave to the Holy Father in executing many of the policies that he wanted to see through. So he does sound like someone who might be coming in. Should it be him, what might
I'll be pope.
That's right. Well, the speculation, and I look forward to finding out.
Speculating is
I
fine.
hope the
So
new
for the
pope
record, in
is
1591, Pope Gregory the 14th
Secretary of
banned
State.
betting on papal. So for the record, we're not placing a wager here.
Not of the U.S., but the
But
Secretary of State of the
I would
Vatican.
think he might be disposed to Paul the
But it
Second,
really depends on
or
who
someone
he
like Pietro
voted
Parolin.
for.
I say that because he was
I have no clue, because
Paul wanted to
there's
go after Rome,
133 other
and
motherfuckers.
there are those
So,
great ties to
I
earlier
mean,
pontificates. So that's just the theory.
It's
of
a
the
good theory.
cardinals.
I'll take it.
I'm not going to comment on that. I've been called the monologue waiting to happen previously in
Go
my life,
forward
but
now.
I'm not going to predict who it is.
No,
I'm not
exactly.
going to predict what his name is because I want to share with all our viewers this enormous surprise. I am, in a sense, praying that I know him. I know a lot of the main
Hold on.
In the same way that we have the clips of Pope Francis and Pope Benedict, but it will be so different today because it's going to be instant, as people will get to know him and actually he'll enter into their hearts and be special to them.
We have warned now for days that just be prepared. Be very judicious and prudent in where you're consuming your social content, because everyone within 30 seconds will have become an expert on this new pope.
That's
I
exactly.
think
Also,
something
getting back
of
to the
mine
question
have
of the name,
arrived.
if you were to put together a list of possible names for popes, I can guarantee that if you put a list of 200 names down, Francis in 2013 probably was not going to be on it. So we have to be very careful about making assumptions.
That's actually very true. And again, the same thing about people
I'll be
who
right
think that
back.
someone would take the name of Francis.
I'm up.
This is spiritual. This is real for us. Everything else doesn't matter. This is real right now.
And the countdown is on. I just gave a little time check on my watch. For John Paul II and Pope Benedict, it took about 45 minutes for those windows to open behind and for the Cardinal Proto-Deacon to come on out and announce those words. For Pope Francis, it took a little longer because he spent about 20 minutes praying in the Blessed Sacrament. But we've now been at this almost for about 30 minutes of intense waiting since we saw the white smoke and heard the bells. And so probably T-minus 20, if not T-minus 10. And so please, people watching us, don't go anywhere.
Oh, they're not going anywhere, and I know I wouldn't either. You have people that I'm sure.
Any possible reason would you have to go somewhere else?
But I know a lot of people who have.
Who y'all think will be the new pope?
I'm at work, but I'm a secret Catholic, and I wrote back. I'm like, don't be a secret Catholic. I'm sure the person next to you wants to watch this live stream too. This is the greatest decision of your life at this point, if you're thinking about how old they might be. But certainly of this decade or of the next 25 years, depending on who walks out, how old he is, this might be the
Who y'all
last
think the
time
new
some
pope will be?
people celebrate a new Holy Father.
That's right. And again, it matters who's Pope. This is beyond. Obviously, for us, he is our Holy Father. But this is also something that has a direct impact on every aspect of life and culture.
And of course, we're seeing more and more and more people come out. I'm just impressed by the ability of this square to hold just thousands of people, oceans of people,
And
holding
maybe
up
it
their
would be
flags.
helpful, Monty, as we approach the Cardinal Proto-Deacon or the next one coming out on that balcony, we could just go over what everybody's going to hear.
Yes,
because
that's a
we're
great
going
idea.
to let you hear it unfiltered. It's going to come out and say, Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum. I announce to you a great joy, habemus papam. There's going to be enormous applause.
I think everyone knows that phrase.
And because you just said it 100 times this afternoon.
Don't forget how they